Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Yamunatiravanachari Yamunatiravanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Yamunatiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Shri Radha Madhav ki, Shri Prabhupada ki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskritya Ram Chaiva Narottamam Satim Vyasam Tato Jamudirayet Nashtaprayeshu abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Hare Krishna, good morning everyone. Today we're reading from Canto 4, Chapter 1. Yesterday I believe we covered verse 6. Next few verses, 7, 8 and so forth, there's just translations and a few lines of purport. So we'll keep reading translations until verse 15, where we have substantial purport to read and discuss. So I'll just read and you can follow from the screen. I'll start with verse 7. The 12 boys born of Yajña and Dakshina were named Tosha, Pratosha, Santosha, Bhadra, Shanti, Idaspati, Idma, Kavi, Bibhu, Swana, Sudeva and Rochana. During the time of Swayambhuva Manu, these sons all became the demigods collectively named the Tushitas. Marichi became the head of the 7 rishis and Yajña became the king of the demigods Indra. Swayambhuva Manu's 2 sons, Priyavrata and Uttanapada, became very powerful kings, and their sons and grandsons spread all over the 3 worlds during that period. My dear son, Swayambhuva Manu handed over his very dear daughter Devahuti to Kardama Muni. I have already spoken to you about them and you have heard about them almost in full. Swayambhuva Manu handed over his daughter Prasuti to the son of Brahma named Daksha, who was also one of the progenitors of the living entities. The descendants of Daksha are spread throughout the 3 worlds. You have already been informed about the 9 daughters of Kardama Muni, who were handed over to 9 different sages. I shall now describe the descendants of those 9 daughters. Please hear from me. Kardama Muni's daughter Kala, who was married to Marichi, gave birth to 2 children, whose names were Kashyapa and Purnima. Their descendants are spread all over the world. My dear Vidura, of the 2 sons Kashyapa and Purnima, Purnima begot 3 children, namely Viraja, Vishwaga and Devakulya. Of these three, Devakulya was the water which washed the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead, and which later on transformed into the Ganges of the heavenly planets. Now verse 15, which we'll chant responsively. Spread over different sections. Atreḥ patny Anasūyā trīñ. Atreḥ pati patny Anasūyā trīñ. Jajñe su-yaśasaḥ sutān. Jajñe su-yaśasaḥ sutān. Dattam durvāsasam somam. Dattam durvāsasam somam. ātmeśa-brahma-sambhavān. ātmeśa-brahma-sambhavān. You would like to chant? Vaishnavis. The word to word. Atreḥ of Atri Muni, patny, wife, Anasūyā, named Anasūyā, trīn, three, jajñe, bore, su-yaśasaḥ, very famous, sutān, sons, dattam, Dattātreya, Durvāsasam, Durvāsā, somam, Soma the moon god, ātma, the Supersoul, ātma-īśa, Lord Śiva, Brahmā, Lord Brahmā, Sambhavān, incarnations of. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Anasūyā, the wife of Atri Muni, gave birth to three very famous sons, Soma, Dattātreya and Durvāsā, were partial representations of Lord Viṣṇu, Lord Śiva and Lord Brahmā. Soma was a partial representation of Lord Brahmā, Dattātreya was a partial representation of Lord Viṣṇu, and Durvāsā was a partial representation of Lord Śiva. Purport. In this verse, we find the words ātma-īśa-brahma-sambhavān. Atma means the Supersoul or Viṣṇu. Isha means Lord Śiva, and Brahma means the four-headed Lord Brahmā. The three sons born of Anasūyā, Dattātreya, Durvāsā and Soma, were born as partial representations of these three demigods. Atma is not in the category of the demigods or living entities because he is Viṣṇu. Therefore, he is described as vibhinnāṁśa-bhūtānām. The Supersoul, Viṣṇu, is the seed-giving father of all living entities, including Brahmā and Lord Śiva. Another meaning of the word Atma may be accepted in this way. The principle, who is the Supersoul in every Atma, or one may say the soul of everyone, became manifested as Dattātreya, because the word amsha, part and parcel, is used here. In Bhagavad Gita, the individual souls are also described as parts of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or Supersoul. So why not accept that Dattātreya was one of those parts? Lord Śiva and Lord Brahmā are also described here as parts. So why not accept all of them as ordinary living individual souls? The answer is that the manifestations of Viṣṇu and those of the ordinary living entities are certainly all parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord. And no one is equal to him, but among the parts and parcels there are different categories. In the Varaha Purana, it is nicely explained that some of the parts are swamsha and some are vibhinnāṁśa. Vibhinnāṁśa are called jivas and swamsha parts are in the Viṣṇu category. In the jiva category, the vibhinnāṁśa parts and parcels, there are also gradations. That is explained in the Viṣṇu Purana, where it is clearly stated that the individual parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord are subject to being covered by the external energy called illusion or maya. Such individual parts and parcels who can travel to any part of the Lord's creation are called sarvagata and are suffering the pangs of material existence. They are proportionately freed from the coverings of ignorance under material existence, according to different levels of work and under different influences of the modes of material nature. For example, the sufferings of jivas situated in the mode of goodness are less than those of the jivas situated in the mode of ignorance. Pure Krishna consciousness, however, is the birthright of all living entities because every living entity is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. The consciousness of the Lord is also in the part and parcel, and according to the proportion to which that consciousness is cleared of material dirt, the living entities are differently situated. In the Vedanta Sutra, the living entities of different gradations are compared to candles or lamps with different candle power. For example, some electric bulbs have the power of 1000 candles, some have the power of 500 candles, some the power of 100 candles, some 50 candles, etc. But all electric bulbs have light. Light is present in every bulb, but the gradations of light are different. Similarly, there are gradations of Brahman. The Viṣṇu Swamsa expansions of the Supreme Lord in different Viṣṇu forms are like lamps. Lord Śiva is also like a lamp, and the supreme candle power, or the 100% light, is Krishna. The Viṣṇu Tattva has 94%, the Śiva Tattva has 84%, the Lord Brahmā has 78%, and the living entities are also like Brahma, but in the conditioned state, the power is still more dim. There are gradations of Brahman, and no one can deny this fact. Therefore, the words ātmeśa-brahma-sambhavān indicate that Dattātreya was directly part and parcel of Viṣṇu, whereas Durvāsā and Soma were parts and parcels of Lord Śiva and Lord Brahmā. This fourth canto, the first chapter, the title of which is Genealogical Table of the Daughters of Manu. We're talking about Swayambhuva Manu here. And in last canto, we're talking about the conversations of Mother Devahuti and Kapila, and Devahuti was the second daughter of Swayambhuva Manu. It is described earlier in one of these translations that Swayambhuva Manu had three daughters named Akuti, Prasuti, and Devahuti. And we were hearing about Devahuti, and she was married to Kardama Muni. They had 9 daughters. They also had a son named Kapila. Right now we also talked about some other daughters of Swayambhuva Manu, but in this particular verse we are talking about one of the daughters of Devahuti. Here it's mentioned that Anasūyā, she was married to Atri Muni. All the different daughters were married to different sages. And out of the marriage of Anasūyā and Atri Muni, they had 3 famous sons. And in one of the later verses, Vidura is asking Maitreya Muni, how come these 3 famous sons are born from Anasūyā? And it will be revealed in the further verses. I don't want to give away any surprises. But here we are talking about the 3 sons, Soma, Dattātreya and Durvāsā. Soma was a partial representation of Lord Brahmā, Dattātreya was of Lord Viṣṇu, and Durvāsā a partial representation of Lord Śiva. I want to talk a little bit about these 3 partial representations. Out of these, maybe we have heard more about Dattātreya and Durvāsā. Dattātreya also comes in the 11th canto, where there is talk about the 24 gurus that Dattātreya has. He described having the earth, the bee. I think he also has a guru like Pingala the prostitute, or someone, or Chintamani, I don't know her name, but he has a prostitute as a guru. There's different elements of nature as his guru. It could be described that he was the original person who learned from the environment, who took the environment as his educational source. But he was also an avadhuta, which means that he was transcendental, but he was situated beyond the rules and regulations of the material world. So we cannot directly copy him and say that I'm also going to have the earth as my teacher, the water as my teacher, and I don't need any physical teachers because I can learn from all of them. And it's true that we can learn from all these different elements of nature, but they can be siksha gurus in some, if we have the right understanding to get what they're teaching. But we all need to follow what is laid out in the scriptures. We need a physical guru who will teach us about the science, the spiritual science. So Dattātreya, this word is comprised of two different, like smaller words. One of them was in the verse, dattam. Dattam means one who gives. And Atreya, the second part, means the son of Atri Muni. Like we know in Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna is addressed as Kaunteya, the son of Kunti. Similarly, the son of Atri, Dattātreya, he was named as Dattātreya. And he was a philosopher. He gave a lot of instructions to different kings, like King Yadu, and some others are explained in the Bhagavatam. And in the purport, Prabhupada is talking about how there's different gradations of Brahman. Like Dattātreya was a part of Viṣṇu, and there was this question raised. So why not accept as Dattātreya was one of those parts? Like maybe he can be considered as one of the jivas, or is he situated in a different category? The first point is that there's God, there's Brahman, but he has different parts and parcels of him. And there could be many different categories in which we can describe them, but broadly there's two categories, Swamsha and Vibhinnāṁśa. Swamsha means his own parts and parcels, and Vibhinnāṁśa, or the jivas, who are separated from Krishna. And amongst the Swamshas, there's different, you could say there's different incarnations, the different categories of Swamshas, which have different power. Like we were talking about candles having different power. Prabhupada gives this analogy often in Bhagavatam and in other of his lectures. So we have, let's say we start with one candle and we use that to light all the other candles. So at the end you could say that there are 50 candles and they all have light, so they're all equal. But we have to remember there's one candle in the beginning which provided light to all the other ones. So in the first canto of Bhagavatam it said, Krishna is that first candle. Etejam sakalapunsa Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. So he was the original personality of Godhead, from whom all these different personalities come about. And why does Krishna incarnate as all these different personalities? It's based on the need of the devotees, the need of the material world. There's different purposes behind each of these incarnations. And we can remember a few prominent ones, like Krishna and Lord Ram and Varaha. They all came to destroy some miscreants who were creating havoc in the world. Like Lord Varaha killed Hiranyaksha, Rama killed Ravana. So they had that particular purpose. And then there was Dhanvantari, who's just famous, who displays the attribute of being famous all over the world. And then there is Naranarayan Rishi, who's an incarnation, but he's known for his renunciation. And there is Dattātreya, who is a philosopher. A few other examples. Dattātreya, there is Lord Kapila, who's known for knowledge, who's philosophers and knowledgeable. There's also Buddha, who came to restore people's faith in spirituality. People were denouncing the Vedic scriptures, and he came to show them a different path, different way of life. So there's different incarnations and they have different purposes. And in this particular verse we're talking about Soma, Dattātreya and Durvāsā. Soma, it was mentioned, is the part of Lord Brahmā. Soma is also another name of the moon god. And in our earth, in the Vedic scriptures, we hear about two different dynasties, two different prominent dynasties which were there. One was the Chandra Vamsha, one which came from moon, and there was the Surya Vamsha. And does anyone know what Vamsha Lord Rama belonged to? Surya Vamsa. And Lord Krishna actually came in the other one, came in the lineage of Soma, the moon god, and thus purifying the sun god and the moon god. And there's not a lot that I know or I've heard about Soma. I can't speak much about him, but we heard a little bit about Dattātreya. But there's also Durvāsā. Durvāsā Muni, who is very famous for kind of the wrong reasons. He always gets enraged, he gets angry very easily. He is a part of Lord Śiva, and we all know that Lord Śiva has like his anger can destroy the whole world when it comes to it, but he keeps it under control. This is a story which describes that Lord Śiva put some of his potency into the womb of Anasūyā, who gave birth to Durvāsā. That's why Durvāsā got some of that temper or that anger from Lord Śiva. We know of many stories in the Bhagavatam. One of the most famous ones is the interaction of Durvāsā with Ambarish Maharaj. I'll just describe it very briefly. Durvāsā Muni goes to Ambarish Maharaj as a guest, and Ambarish Maharaj is at this point has followed Ekadashi, but it's the next day and he's about to break fast. But now he receives a guest, and the proper etiquette is to serve the guest first. But then Lord Durvāsā Muni goes to take a bath. He goes to take a bath and get ready for meal. And the time for Parayan, the time in which you're supposed to break fast, it's almost about to be over. And Durvāsā Muni is still not back. So Ambarish Maharaj is thinking, in order to gain the right benefits of doing the Ekadashi, I should break my fast at the right time. And so what he decides is to drink Charnamrit, which is considered that it's simultaneously breaking fast but not exactly breaking fast. It's cool how there's some principles like this. Based on what you interpret it as, it could go either this way or that way. So he does this, he drinks Charnamrit, but Durvāsā Muni, through his supreme potency, mystic potency, he's able to know that the person who is supposed to host me, he just broke his fast. How could he do this? And he comes back and is very angry, and he takes a piece of his hair and produces a ferocious demon. And Ambarish Maharaj is just so humble, he's such a sweet devotee of the Lord. He's not disturbed by all this. But Lord Viṣṇu, on seeing this, he sends his Sudarshan Chakra. He could not tolerate that his devotee was going to be attacked or offended. And Durvāsā Muni, on seeing this, he's surprised that why is the Sudarshan Chakra coming at me? Then he realizes that he did something really bad. And he starts running all over the world. He goes to Śiva, Brahmā, all these different demigods, but everyone's sorry, we can't help you. Wrong number. Don't get us in trouble. You're going to get in trouble and you're also going to get us in trouble. So finally he reaches Lord Viṣṇu, who says that you offended my dear devotee, and I don't have control over Sudarshan Chakra. I'm under the control of my dear devotee. So if you want to get rid of the danger that's chasing you, you have to go and ask forgiveness from Ambarish Maharaj. And so Durvāsā Muni then understands the power of Bhakti Yogi, a Bhakta. So we have mystic yogis, one of which was Durvāsā, and there's Bhakta. There's a devotee who is Ambarish Maharaj. And then we can understand through different stories that devotion to the Supreme Lord is always higher than mystic yogi. And then Durvāsā learns his lesson. But there's also other stories. He once comes to the Pandavas, and there's a story of the Akshaya Patra. I don't want to go too much into detail. But there's also this story about when he was once traveling and he came to Vraj, Vrindavan Dham. And he came to the village of Radharani. And Radharani's mother engaged her in the service of Durvāsā Muni. And he was so pleased by her service that he gave her this benediction that whoever eats the food that you have prepared, he is never going to be she is never going to be sick. And it's going to be like nectar, they'll never be able to stop eating this. And word spreads around Vrindavan, and Mother Yashoda hears about this benediction. That's why, because she's really concerned about the health and well-being of her child, Krishna. So she brings Radharani to cook for Krishna, and it's just a transcendental leela. The same person, Durvāsā Muni, who is supposed to, who is shown to have a bad temper, you could see that he's not a good person. You could kind of judge him in a different way, but the same Durvāsā Muni is also in this wonderful story where he gives benediction to Radharani. So we cannot exactly put these different people under one, we cannot view them in one lens. Like Durvāsā Muni is just angry, so he's just a bad person, or someone else is a good person. That brings me to this point which Prabhupada mentions in the script, in the purport here. Pure Krishna consciousness is the birthright of all living entities. On this point that we all have dormant Krishna consciousness in our hearts, and Nitya Shuddha Krishna Prema Sadhya Kavunai Shravanadi Suddha Chitte Karay Udai. That it's dormant within all the living entities, and what they have to do is somehow or other come into contact with the devotees, with the message of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that can somehow arouse in them the feeling that they are also a part of Krishna, the Supreme Person. But how this exactly happens, like how a living entity from completely being forgetful comes to engage in devotional service. Let's say someone receives a book on the street. Going from that stage to coming here to the temple and rendering full-time service or offering a lamp, there's a lot like which happens in between. There's different stages that a new person goes through. And I was reading a certain presentation, I was watching a certain presentation by a devotee about outreach, and they were sharing that it's our responsibility as part of Prabhupada's movement, we have in this preaching movement, that we should oversee that a person, new person, goes through all these different stages and finally comes to devotional service. We cannot overlook these stages. It cannot be just a homogeneous like moment of surrender. Like when I first came to the temple, I was just convinced right away. We cannot assume that every other person is going to feel the same way. It might take them a lot of coming and going and then slowly building trust. They don't know what they're looking for, and even if they know what they're looking for in a temple, something might happen here which makes them unsure. Oh, maybe this is a cult and I don't want to be a part of this. These people seem like very robotic in their actions. So they could think of all this different way. So it's our responsibility to present Krishna consciousness in a way which is suitable for every living entity individually. It cannot be tailored into just one formula which fits for all of them. And we have to be very personal in our interactions with these new people and see what really fits them. And we're also talking about different gradations of living entities, and I'm trying to relate that to this point of preaching, of outreach. We can, since we are part of this movement of Srila Prabhupada, which is a preaching movement, how can we all contribute to that? It's not like all of us are going to be big book distributors. Like we have a lot of like very adept and famous book distributors in this temple. We might not have the appetite for that or the inclination for that, but we can also support them in different ways. Like we have Raja Prabhu who is doing an outreach program at his studio. We can help him in a certain way. We can just contribute by giving our time to the program or help him with whatever he needs. And there's all different programs happening around the city. There's some people, the book distributors, who go and find those souls and send them to the temple or the outreach center, and we can just be there. We can help in cooking, we can help in cleaning that place, making sure it's completely ready for a new person to come. So in this way we could also contribute to the outreach like movement. We can contribute based on our capacity, our inclination. It's not like everyone has to do one particular kind of service, that the book distribution is the foremost service and everyone who's not doing book distribution is not good enough. Or the deity worship is the topmost service and everyone who's not doing deity worship is not good enough. But we all have different inclinations, we all have different reasons of coming close to Krishna, and we can use that propensity in spreading the message of Krishna consciousness to everyone around us. So those are a few thoughts that I had on this verse. I would like to stop here for the spirit of time and see if anyone has any questions, any thoughts, comments. Sadev?
Thank you, Prabhu. I appreciate you bringing up the different pastimes and passages from the Bhagavatam where these sons of Atri, they come up again. And it blew my mind, because as we were reading the verses, I was thinking, oh man, not another genealogical chapter. It's just all these names, I don't know what it is, and I don't know how this is relevant to, practicing devotional service. But then, yeah, there are all these stories of Durvāsā Muni, even in Krishna Lila, and I'm like, whoa, he came all the way from the 4th canto back to the 10th canto, I guess.
It's a long travel.
And then also Soma appears in the 9th canto, like up to the appearance of Parashuram. There's a lot of really dramatic things that happen with him, and Dattātreya too, you were saying. So it's really nice. I had a realization that every verse, every chapter, every syllable, like Sanatana Goswami says of the Bhagavatam, it pours down a flood of nectar. So it's really relevant, and all of it even if you don't see it, it will reveal its significance at some point.
Yeah, exactly. I also feel the same way. There are certain sections of the Bhagavatam where it's describing the creation, all the different elements of creation. We all might relate to some section, and we all might be like not so tuned into that section. But if you just hear like the reason for that particular section being in the Bhagavatam will be revealed to us. We'll slowly understand that. Thank you for your comment. Any other questions? Thoughts? Where's Naikatma Prabhu?
Thank you very much, Prabhu. In previous purport, Prabhupada mentions that Purnima begot 3 children, and one of them, Devakulya, became, which is the presiding deity of River Ganga, came down from the heavenly planets. Can you give us any thoughts on how Devakulya was transformed into the river Ganga?
That's a wonderful question, but unfortunately I do not know very much about this particular aspect. The Devakulya is the presiding deity of the river Ganges. We have heard in a different part of Bhagavatam, we hear this story of the Ganga coming from the spiritual world, coming washing the feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, coming to the head of Lord Śiva, and through there coming to this earthly planet. But sadly I do not know how Devakulya becomes the presiding deity. Does anyone else have any idea, would like to share any light on this? Sorry about that. Maybe we can read more, read further, and I can share it later. Right now I don't really have a particular understanding of this. Hope that's okay. If there is no other question in the comments, we will stop here. Antharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaur Premanande.